The moon called Varaxis Prime had not always been a testing ground. 12,000 years ago, it was a barren rock spinning around a gas giant that no one cared about. Then the Galactic Federation decided they needed a place to measure every species that reached the stars. They hollowed out the moon. They filled it with facilities that stretched for thousands of kilometers. They created the Crucible Protocol. Administrator Kethral had worked at the facility for 63 years. His 6 limbs moved with practiced efficiency as he walked through the observation deck. Behind him, a group of young officials from various Federation worlds followed like students on their first day of school. The Crucible Protocol is simple in concept, Kethral said. His voice carried the dry tone of someone who had given this speech hundreds of times. Every species that achieves faster than light travel must send a representative for evaluation. We test them. We measure them. We classify them. A young Scythera raised her hand. Her scales shimmered blue in the artificial light. What exactly do the classifications mean? Kethral stopped at a massive window that overlooked the primary testing arena below. They determine everything. Laborers handle physical work across Federation worlds. Technicians maintain our infrastructure. Administrators manage systems and populations. He paused. And warriors receive military contracts, political influence, the highest status our society offers. How do you decide who becomes what? Another official asked. We measure what matters: strength, speed, endurance, pain tolerance, reaction time, strategic thinking, psychological resilience, combat potential. Kethral gestured at the arena below, where a massive creature covered in armor plates was lifting weights that could crush a transport shuttle. The Krathic down there score highest in raw aggression. The Mulvanni dominate endurance tests. The Cythera lead in reflexes. Every warrior race in the Federation has been ranked and placed according to their strengths. The system had worked for 12,000 years. Every species fit somewhere. Every species had a role. The Federation ran smoothly because everyone knew their place. That was about to change. The notification arrived on Kethral's personal device 3 days later. A new species had achieved FTL travel. They called themselves humans. They came from a planet called Earth. Their representative would arrive within the week for standard evaluation. Kethral pulled up the preliminary data. Earth was a mid-range gravity world. Nothing special about its atmosphere. The dominant species had developed technology at a reasonable pace. They had no natural weapons worth mentioning. No armor plating, no venom, no claws that could cut through metal. He flagged the file as low priority and moved on to more pressing matters. When the human ship arrived, Kethral was handling a dispute between 2 Krathic candidates who had nearly killed each other in the dining facility. He sent a junior administrator to handle the initial intake. The junior administrator returned 2 hours later, looking confused. There's only one of them, the young Vorthani said. Kethral looked up from his paperwork. One what? One human. They sent a single representative. This was unusual. Most species sent their finest warriors in groups of 5 or 10. They wanted to show off their best. They wanted multiple chances to score well. Sending one individual was either supreme confidence or complete ignorance of how the system worked. Bring them to the preliminary assessment chamber, Kethral said. The human who walked through his door was not impressive. She stood roughly average height for a bipedal species. Her skin was brown and smooth, lacking any protective covering. Her eyes were small compared to most predator species. Her hands ended in blunt fingers with small nails that couldn't cut paper, much less an enemy. Staff Sergeant Maria Chen, she said. Her voice was calm, measured. Representing Earth. Kethral activated his scanning equipment. The preliminary biological assessment would take only a few minutes. Please stand still. This won't hurt. The scanner hummed as it mapped her internal structure. Kethral watched the data scroll across his display. Skeleton made of calcium compounds, muscles attached in standard patterns, organs arranged in predictable configurations. Nothing remarkable. Then the anomalies started appearing. Her cardiovascular system showed unusual redundancy. Her brain contained structures he couldn't immediately categorize. Her hormonal system seemed designed for rapid state changes that didn't match her baseline physiology. The scanner flagged dozens of minor oddities that didn't fit together into any pattern he recognized. Is something wrong? Maria Chen asked. Kethrall realized he had been staring at the display for too long. No, everything is standard. I will schedule your first test for tomorrow morning. She nodded and followed the escort to her quarters without further comment. That night, Kethrall reviewed the human data more carefully. The contradictions multiplied the longer he looked. Humans were omnivores, but their teeth and jaws could deliver a bite force comparable to some predator species. Their muscles were not exceptional in raw power, but they were remarkably efficient over long periods. Their nervous system seemed optimized for something, but he couldn't determine what. He pulled up Earth's evolutionary history from the Federation database. The file was thin. Earth had only recently been discovered, and detailed biological surveys hadn't been completed yet. What little information existed painted a strange picture. Humans had evolved on a planet that seemed determined to kill them. Ice ages that froze half the world. Volcanic events that blocked out the sun. Predators with claws and teeth that dwarfed human capabilities. Disease outbreaks that killed millions. And through all of it, humans had survived. More than survived. They had spread across every continent on their world. They had outlasted species far better equipped for survival. Kethrall made a note to observe the humans' test personally. Maria Chen arrived at the testing arena precisely on time the next morning. 46 other species representatives had gathered for this evaluation cycle. They represented the current crop of civilizations seeking Federation classification. The Krathic representative stood 3 meters tall. His armor plating could stop most projectile weapons. His claws had evolved to tear through metal. When he walked, the ground shook slightly under his mass. The Mulvaney contestant was even larger. 800 kilograms of dense muscle packed into a body built for endurance. Her species could march for days without rest. They had conquered their homeworld through sheer persistence. The Scythera candidate moved like water. Her scales shifted color as she walked, a display of emotional state, or perhaps a threat response. Her species could react to danger in milliseconds. Most other species couldn't even see their fastest movements. And then there was Maria Chen, the smallest biped in the arena, standing among giants with nothing but her standard-issue testing uniform and a calm expression that hadn't changed since she arrived. Several observers made quiet comments to each other. A few laughed. The betting pools, which were technically illegal but universally tolerated, had her ranked last among all candidates. Kethrall activated the arena's communication system. Welcome to the Crucible Protocol. Over the next 7 days, you will face a series of tests designed to measure your species' potential. Your performance will determine your civilization's classification within the Federation. Please proceed to Station 1 for strength assessment. The test began. Maria Chen lifted weights. She performed adequately. Her strength placed her in the lower third of candidates. The Krathic lifted 3 times what she managed. The Mulvaney lifted 4 times. Several observers lost interest in the human and focused on more promising candidates. Kethrall watched the human carefully. She didn't seem disappointed by her results. She didn't seem worried about how she compared to others. She simply completed each task, recorded her scores, and moved to the next station. Speed testing went similarly. Reaction time was average. Flexibility was above average but not remarkable. By the end of the first day, Maria Chen had established herself as thoroughly unremarkable across every physical metric. The junior administrator approached Kethrall during the evening meal break. Should we recommend the human for laborer classification? Her scores suggest she won't qualify for anything higher. Kethrall considered the question. Standard procedure said yes. Her numbers were clear, but something kept him from signing the recommendation. Wait for the endurance test tomorrow, he said. Something about her biology doesn't make sense. I want to see how she performs over extended periods. The junior administrator shrugged and returned to his station. That night, Kethrall reviewed the first day's recordings. He watched Maria Chen perform each test. He noticed something that hadn't registered during the live observations. She never pushed herself fully. During strength tests, her heart rate stayed well below maximum. During speed trials, her breathing remained controlled. Even during flexibility assessments, she moved with careful precision rather than straining for maximum range. It was subtle. Anyone not looking for it would miss it entirely. But Maria Chen had held back. Through every test, she had deliberately performed below her actual capacity. The question was why? Kethril pulled up her file again. He read through the intake documentation. Staff Sergeant. A military rank from Earth. Her government had selected her through a process they declined to explain. She had arrived alone, without support staff or advisors. He looked at the human's quarters on the security feed. She sat on her bed reading something on a small device. Her expression was peaceful, focused, like someone preparing for an event she had trained for all her life. Kethril realized he had underestimated this species. The thought made him uncomfortable. In 63 years, he had never misjudged a candidate's potential so badly. Tomorrow's endurance test would reveal the truth. Either the human would perform as her first-day scores suggested, or she would show what she had been hiding. Kethril found himself looking forward to finding out. For the first time in decades, the Crucible Protocol had given him something unexpected. He hoped the Federation was ready for what they might discover. The endurance phase began at dawn. Kethril had positioned himself at the primary observation station. He wanted to watch every moment of what came next. The other administrators thought he was wasting his time. The human had already proven herself unremarkable. Why focus on a candidate destined for laborer classification? They would understand soon enough. 47 candidates gathered in the endurance arena. The space was massive. Running tracks stretched for kilometers. Climbing walls rose toward the distant ceiling. Swimming pools contained water at various temperatures. The test was simple in concept. Run, climb, swim, keep moving. The last one standing scored highest. The Krathic representative cracked his armored knuckles. His species dominated short-burst combat. They could deliver devastating attacks in seconds, but endurance was not their strength. Everyone knew he would not last long. The Mulvaney representative stretched her massive limbs. Her species was built for exactly this kind of test. They could march for days across hostile terrain. They had conquered their homeworld through persistence. She was the heavy favorite to win. Maria Chen did a few simple stretches, nothing impressive, nothing that suggested she was preparing for anything unusual. "Begin," Kethril announced. The candidates started running. For the first hour, nothing interesting happened. Everyone moved at sustainable paces. The Mulvaney set a steady rhythm that her body could maintain for days. The Krathic started fast but was already beginning to slow. Maria Chen ran in the middle of the pack, neither leading nor falling behind. At the 2-hour mark, the first candidates dropped out. Two species with high explosive power but low stamina. They had pushed too hard too early. Their handlers helped them to recovery stations. At 4 hours, the Krathic representative collapsed. His massive body simply stopped responding. The armor plating that made him so formidable in combat was now dead weight his muscles couldn't carry. He had to be lifted by 3 medical staff and taken for treatment. Kethril checked Maria Chen's readings. Her heart rate was elevated but steady. Her breathing was controlled. She showed no signs of significant stress. At 6 hours, the Sithara candidate stopped. Her species relied on speed, not stamina. Her fast-twitch muscles had burned through their fuel reserves. She walked to the sidelines without complaint, knowing she had performed as expected. More candidates dropped at the 8-hour mark. Then the 10-hour mark. The field thinned steadily as species hit their natural limits. At 12 hours, something changed. Only 5 candidates remained. The Mulvaney, of course, a species called the Torvak that resembled moving mountains of flesh, 2 insectoid species with efficient metabolisms, and Maria Chen. The observers began paying attention to the human again. "How is she still running?" the junior administrator asked. Kethril watched the human's biometric readings. Her body was experiencing significant stress now. Lactic acid was building in her muscles. Her energy reserves were depleting. By every measure, she should be slowing down. She was speeding up. At the 15-hour mark, the 2 insectoid candidates dropped simultaneously. Their chitinous bodies simply could not generate enough heat to maintain activity. At 18 hours, the Torvak fell. The massive creature had consumed its internal reserves and entered a state of hibernation. It would sleep for days while its body recovered. Only the Mulvaney and Maria Chen remained. The Mulvaney increased her pace. This was her moment. Her species had been bred for exactly this test. She would prove her superiority and secure warrior classification for her people. Maria Chen matched her pace. The Mulvaney pushed harder. Her breathing became labored. Her heart rate spiked, but she refused to let this small creature outlast her. Maria Chen stayed beside her. 20 hours passed. 22, 24. The Mulvaney's body began showing signs of serious distress. Her temperature rose dangerously. Her heart rhythm became irregular. The medical staff hovered nearby, ready to intervene. At 26 hours, the Mulvaney stumbled. She tried to catch herself. Her legs refused to respond. She collapsed in a heap of exhausted muscle and was immediately surrounded by medical staff. Maria Chen kept running. Catherall stared at his display. The human's body was consuming itself now. Her muscles were breaking down their own proteins for fuel. Her organs were showing signs of stress that would require medical attention. But she showed no intention of stopping. "End the test," he ordered. "Sir?" the junior administrator asked. "End it now. She won't stop on her own?" They had to physically block Maria Chen's path to make her stop running. Even then, she tried to go around them. Her mind was still sending run signals, even as her body failed to respond. Final time, 31 hours. The previous record for a mammalian species was 19 hours. The medical team rushed Maria Chen to the recovery ward. They stabilized her vitals, replaced her fluids, and began treating the micro-damage throughout her body. Catherall visited her room 3 hours later. She was awake, sitting up, and requesting permission to exercise. "Your muscles need time to repair," he said. "They repair better with light movement," she replied. "We call it active recovery." Catherall sat down slowly. His 6 limbs folded beneath him as he considered how to phrase his next question. "Your species, does this happen to all of you?" "What do you mean?" "The refusal to stop, the continuation past the point of damage. Your body was breaking down, yet your mind kept pushing." Maria Chen was quiet for a moment. "We have a saying on Earth, the body gives up before the mind has to. We're taught that the feeling of exhaustion is just a warning signal, not an actual limit. You train yourselves to ignore survival instincts. We train ourselves to push past them when necessary." She looked at her hands. "Our ancestors chased prey across savannas for days. The animals were faster. The animals were stronger. But the animals would stop eventually. Rest. Try to recover. And our ancestors would just keep coming. Walking, jogging, never stopping. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion, and our ancestors would be standing over them." Catherall processed this information. "You evolved as persistent as predators. Among other things." The pain tolerance test came next. Catherall had seen thousands of species go through this evaluation. The test applied graduated neural stimulation to measure where each species broke. Everyone had a limit. The brain simply could not process pain beyond a certain threshold. Maria Chen sat in the testing chair, electrodes attached to key nerve clusters. The machine hummed as it prepared the first level of stimulation. "This will be uncomfortable," Catherall warned. "I've been through worse," she said. The first level triggered. Maria's face tightened. Her readings showed the expected pain response. Level 2. Her jaw clenched. Her hands gripped the armrests. Level 3. She began sweating. Her heart rate increased. Catherall watched the numbers climb. The average mammalian species broke at level 4. Warrior class species typically manage level 6. Level 4. Maria grunted but did not cry out. Level 5. Her body tensed completely. Every muscle locked. Level 6. A Kratic berserker had reached this level once. He had to be sedated afterward. Maria Chen was still conscious, still in control. "Increase," she said through gritted teeth. Level 7. Tears streamed down her face. Her body shook violently, but she did not scream. She did not beg for it to stop. Level 8. The machine's maximum setting. Maria Chen remained conscious, suffering but aware. The test ended. The medical team rushed to disconnect her. She was shaking badly. Her voice was hoarse when she spoke. "Is that all you have?" Catherall could not respond. The recovery wing filled with candidates from the physical trials. The Kratic needed 4 days before he could walk again. The Mulvaney required specialized treatment for organ stress. Most species needed extended rest before continuing to the next phase. Maria Chen asked to use the exercise facilities the next morning. Kethril sent a medical technician to check on her. The technician returned looking shaken. "What's wrong?" Kethril asked. "Her muscles," the technician said. "The micro tears from the endurance test. They're healing." "Of course they're healing. All biological tissue heals." "You don't understand. They're healing stronger than before. The damaged sites are rebuilding with denser fiber structures. Her body isn't just recovering. It's improving." Kethril accessed Maria Chen's historical scans. He compared them to her current readings. The technician was right. The human was literally getting stronger from the experience that should have crippled her. He remembered something from the Earth evolutionary file. Humans didn't just survive challenges. They adapted to them. Their bodies changed in response to stress. Bones grew denser under pressure. Muscles rebuilt stronger after damage. Even their minds formed new connections after trauma. They were a species that got harder to kill the more you tried to kill them. That night, Kethril couldn't sleep. He kept returning to the data, kept looking for some explanation that fit into the Federation's existing categories. He found none. The human was not the strongest candidate, not the fastest, not the most durable by initial measurements. But she possessed something no other species in the Federation had shown: a fundamental refusal to stop, a biological system designed to improve under pressure, a mind that treated its own survival limits as suggestions rather than rules. He pulled up Earth's history again. The same planet that produced Maria Chen had also produced weapons capable of destroying all life on its surface. They had developed these weapons. They had used some of them. They had witnessed the consequences, and they had stopped. A species that could push past any limit. A species that got stronger from adversity. A species that had created the means to destroy itself and chosen not to. Kethril began drafting a preliminary report. He marked it for High Council review. The physical tests were complete. The psychological evaluation would begin tomorrow. He suspected that would be even more interesting than what he had already witnessed. The psychological evaluation chamber was different from the physical testing arena. No weights, no running tracks, no measurement devices visible anywhere. Just a simple room with a single chair and walls that could project any environment the administrators chose. Maria Chen entered without hesitation. She had been through 2 days of brutal physical testing. Most candidates needed extensive recovery time before facing the mental phase. She had requested to continue immediately. Kethril observed from the control room above. His junior staff operated the simulation equipment while he watched every detail on his displays. "The psychological phase has broken more warrior candidates than any physical test," he said to the observers who had gathered to watch. Word had spread about the humans' performance. Now everyone wanted to see what came next. Strength without mind produces only beasts. We need soldiers who can think, plan, and maintain sanity under impossible pressure. The first test was strategic simulation, the scenario loaded around Maria Chen. She suddenly found herself commanding a small defensive force, civilian population to protect, enemy army approaching, insufficient resources, no possibility of reinforcement. The simulation was designed to be unwinnable. Every species that had faced it eventually collapsed into tactical chaos. The test measured how long candidates maintained coherent command before psychological failure. Most species attempted the obvious solutions: form defensive lines, call for help that wouldn't come, fight until overwhelmed. They lasted an average of 4 hours before breaking down. Maria Chen did something unexpected. "What are my exact assets?" she asked the simulation. The AI controlling the scenario provided details: 300 defenders, limited ammunition, basic fortifications, 20,000 civilians. "What are the enemy's objectives?" the AI responded. "The enemy sought to capture the city. Their political masters wanted it intact." "What is the enemy command structure?" This was not a standard question. The AI provided information about the opposing forces' organization. Maria Chen nodded slowly. Then she began issuing orders that made no sense to the observers. She split her forces into small groups. She abandoned the main defensive positions. She sent soldiers to seemingly random locations throughout the city. She ordered civilians to begin creating obstacles in specific patterns. "She's losing," one observer said. "She's throwing away her defensive advantage." Kethril said nothing. He was watching the simulation's strategic overview. Maria Chen wasn't throwing anything away. She was creating the illusion of a larger force. Her scattered units moved in patterns that suggested thousands of defenders rather than hundreds. The obstacles created by civilians forced the enemy to advance through specific corridors where her soldiers waited. When the enemy entered the city, they found themselves fighting shadows. Units that appeared and vanished. Attacks from unexpected directions. A defense that seemed to be everywhere at once. The enemy commander grew frustrated. He committed more forces to the assault. Maria Chen allowed them to push forward, then struck at their supply lines with soldiers she had hidden in the rubble. 4 hours passed. The city still stood. At the 6-hour mark, Maria Chen did something no candidate had ever attempted. She contacted the enemy's subordinate commanders directly. "Your general is getting your soldiers killed for nothing," she told them through captured communication equipment. "This city will never fall easily. But your general doesn't care about your lives. He only cares about his promotion." The simulation AI processed this unexpected input. Subordinate commanders began questioning their orders. A few units hesitated at critical moments. The assault lost coordination. By the 12-hour mark, the enemy army was experiencing internal conflict. Some units pulled back without orders. Others refused to advance into what they saw as certain death. Maria Chen kept pushing. She offered surrender terms to enemy units that were willing to stop fighting. She guaranteed fair treatment. Some accepted. The simulation stretched to 19 days before the administrators ended it manually. Maria Chen had not won. The scenario was designed to prevent victory. But she had achieved something more impressive. She had turned an unwinnable situation into a stalemate through pure tactical creativity. Kethril reviewed the recording 3 times before moving to the next test. The psychological stress assessment came next. Candidates were subjected to simulated trauma designed to trigger species-specific breaking points. Social species faced isolation. Claustrophobic species faced confinement. The test found what hurt each species most and kept applying pressure until the mind failed. For Maria Chen, the simulation chose loss of comrades. She found herself on a battlefield. Her squad around her, soldiers she had trained with, friends. Then they started dying, one by one. Explosions, gunfire, accidents, each death designed to maximize emotional impact. Each loss specifically crafted to break human psychological resilience. Maria Chen watched her simulated friends die. Then the simulation reset. They were alive again. Then they died again. Reset, death. Reset, death. The administrators watched for standard responses: dissociation, catatonic withdrawal, violent rage, complete emotional shutdown. Maria Chen cried. She screamed. She pounded the simulation walls with her fists. Then she stood up. She wiped her face. She straightened her uniform. "What comes next?" she asked. The administrators exchanged glances. The simulation ran 7 more cycles. 7 more times watching friends die. 7 more times grieving. 7 more times standing back up. Kethril stopped the test himself. "How do you remain functional?" he asked through the communication system. Maria Chen looked at where she thought the cameras were. "We learned to carry grief and still function. The alternative was extinction. You feel the pain fully. I can see it in your readings. You are not suppressing the emotion. No, we feel everything. We just keep going anyway." Humans have a word for it. Several words, actually. Resilience, endurance, stubbornness. She almost smiled. "Some of us are too angry to give up. Some of us are too sad. Some of us just don't know how to stop." The fear response test followed. The Federation had cataloged the deepest terrors of every species: darkness, fire, heights, predators, helplessness, water, confinement. The simulations exposed candidates to their specific fears to measure panic responses and recovery times. Maria Chen was subjected to all of them. Darkness so complete that her eyes created phantom shapes. Fire that consumed everything around her. Heights that made her stomach drop. Predators that circled with hungry eyes. Helplessness as restraints held her immobile. Her readings showed intense fear responses. Her body flooded with stress hormones. Her heart rate spiked. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. Every biological indicator screamed that she was terrified, but her actions didn't match her biology. In the darkness, she moved forward, found walls, mapped the space by touch. In the fire, she analyzed escape routes, identified the coolest pathways. On the heights, she secured her footing, planned her descent. Facing predators, she armed herself, prepared to fight. In restraints, she tested every binding, looked for weaknesses, terrified, functional, both at the same time. Catherall requested a private conversation after the test concluded. "Your readings showed extreme fear," he said, "yet you continued acting effectively. How is this possible?" Maria Chen considered the question carefully. "We have a concept called courage. It doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means the decision to act despite fear. You choose to override your survival instincts, sometimes when something matters more than our own safety." She paused. "Fear exists to protect us, but sometimes protection isn't the goal. Sometimes the goal is protecting others, or completing a mission, or just refusing to let the fear win." This seems contradictory. Humans are full of contradictions. We're afraid of death, but will sacrifice ourselves for others. We're afraid of pain, but will endure it for what we believe in. We're afraid of failure, but keep trying anyway. She looked at him with those small human eyes. Fear is information. It tells us what's dangerous, but it doesn't get to make our decisions for us. That night, Catherall submitted his preliminary report to the High Council. His superiors demanded he rerun the tests. They suspected equipment malfunction, some kind of error that had produced impossible results. He reran every test. The results held. The High Council requested a private briefing. Catherall traveled to the central chamber where the 12 founding species debated Federation policy. He had never been summoned there before. Junior administrators did not normally warrant the Council's attention. "Your report contains extraordinary claims," said Councillor Vareth, the ancient Tholmian who had served longest on the Council. "You suggest this human species cannot be classified using our existing system." "That is correct," Catherall said. "Their physical metrics are average in most categories. They score in the lower third for strength. Their speed is unremarkable. Their natural armor is non-existent. By traditional measures, they would be classified as laborers." "Then what is the issue?" Catherall activated his display. The Council watched Maria Chen's test recordings. "The issue is that traditional measures don't capture what makes them dangerous. Their endurance is unprecedented. Their pain tolerance exceeds our equipment's maximum settings. Their psychological resilience allows them to function effectively while experiencing emotional states that would incapacitate other species." He showed them the strategic simulation, the fear response tests, the recovery data showing her body improving from damage. "Most importantly," he continued, "they possess something we have never documented before, a trait we have no classification for, which is," Catherall chose his words carefully, "they can choose to override their own survival instincts, not through chemical suppression or biological modification, through pure will. They feel fear and act anyway. They feel pain and continue anyway. They face impossible odds and refuse to surrender." The Council was silent. "This makes them dangerous," Catherall concluded, "not because of any single capability, because they can push past any limit we set, because they improve under pressure, because they have already faced extinction multiple times in their history and refuse to accept it." Councillor Vareth leaned forward. "What do you recommend?" Catherall had thought about this question for days. "I recommend we observe the final test before making any decisions. But I also recommend the Council prepare for the possibility that our classification system is insufficient for this species." "Insufficient how?" "We designed the Crucible Protocol to measure what species are: physical capabilities, mental capacities, behavioral patterns." He looked at the frozen image of Maria Chen on his display. "Humans may require us to measure something different, not what they are, but what they choose to become." The Council dismissed him with orders to continue observation and report daily. Catherall returned to Varaxis Prime, wondering what the final test would reveal. He suspected it would be the most important result in the history of the Crucible Protocol. Word traveled fast through the testing facility. The human representative had done something unusual. The human representative had done something unprecedented. The human representative had broken records that had stood for thousands of years. By the fifth day of testing, Maria Chen had become an object of fascination. The other candidates watched her in the common areas. They studied her movements. They tried to understand what they were seeing. A creature smaller than most of them, weaker by all initial measurements, yet somehow still standing when warriors twice her size had collapsed. The Krathic representative approached her during the evening meal period. His name was Thrak. His species had held the top ranking in combat classifications for 300 years. His personal scores had exceeded every other Krathic candidate in the current cycle. His armor plating had been polished until it gleamed. His claws had been sharpened to molecular edges. He was everything a warrior was supposed to be, and he wanted to understand the human who had outperformed him. "You!" His voice rumbled through the dining hall. Other candidates turned to watch. "Human, I wish to speak with you." Maria Chen looked up from her meal. "Sure, have a seat." Thrak had not expected casual acceptance. He had expected fear, or at least caution. His species inspired both in most creatures. He sat across from her, his massive form making the table seem like furniture designed for children. "How did you outlast me in the endurance phase?" he asked directly. "Your muscles are inferior. Your lungs are smaller. Your heart pumps less blood." "Efficiency," Maria said, "and stubbornness. Mostly stubbornness. That is not an answer. It's the only answer I have." She took a bite of the bland nutrition paste that passed for food in the facility. "My ancestors evolved to chase animals for days. We're not built for explosive power like your species. We're built to just keep going. Forever if we have to." Thrak considered this. His species had evolved differently. They had become ambush predators, short bursts of devastating violence. The concept of wearing prey down over days was foreign to his biology. "I wish to test something," he said. "A combat exercise, no points, no official record, just you and me." The dining hall went quiet. Everyone understood what Thrak was asking for. A sparring match between the current highest-ranked warrior candidate and the strange human who had broken the endurance records. Maria finished her meal. "Sure. When?" "Now." They walked to the practice arena together. A crowd followed. Even Kethral received notification and arrived to observe. This was not an official test, but the results would be informative. The practice arena was smaller than the main testing grounds. Padded floors, safety barriers, medical staff standing by. The space was designed for sparring matches that would not result in permanent injury. Thrak removed his ceremonial chest covering. His armor plating covered his vital organs completely. His claws extended to their full length. He moved into a fighting stance that his species had perfected over centuries. Maria Chen stretched her shoulders. She bounced lightly on her feet. She raised her hands in a guard position that looked almost comically inadequate compared to Thrak's natural weapons. "Rules?" she asked. "Yield or inability to continue," Thrak said. "Works for me." They circled each other. Thrak struck first. His species attacked with overwhelming force. His arm blurred toward Maria's head with enough power to crack stone. She wasn't there. Maria had moved the moment his weight shifted. She had read his body language, predicted the attack, slipped aside by centimeters. Thrak recovered and struck again. Faster this time, more precise. Maria twisted. The claw passed through empty air. The crowd murmured. They had never seen anything dodge a Krathic strike so easily. Thrak changed tactics. He pressed forward with a series of attacks designed to overwhelm. Speed and power and reach all working together. Maria retreated, ducked, deflected. She didn't try to block his strikes directly. She redirected them, used his momentum against him, let his attacks slide past her rather than stopping them cold. "Stop running," Thrak growled. "Fight me." Maria smiled slightly. "I am fighting you." She moved inside his guard. Her hand struck his throat, not hard enough to cause damage through his neck armor, but hard enough to make him flinch. She was gone before he could respond, back at distance, still circling. Thrak felt something he rarely experienced. Frustration. He was bigger, stronger, better armed. This small creature should not be able to touch him. He charged, full speed. No restraint. His claws swept in patterns that would shred anything in their path. Maria dropped low. She swept his legs. 300 kilograms of Krathic warrior hit the padded floor with a crash that shook the arena. She was on him before he could rise, her hand positioned over the gap in his armor where his throat met his chest. The only vulnerable point on a Krathic's front. A killing blow if she had a weapon. Yield? She asked quietly. The arena was silent. Thrax stared up at the small creature that had somehow put him on the ground. His training told him to keep fighting. His pride screamed that he could not lose to something so inferior. But his warrior instincts recognized the truth. He was beaten. I yield, he said. Maria stepped back. She offered him a hand. He stared at it for a moment, then accepted. She helped pull him to his feet. Good match, she said. Your speed is incredible. If you hadn't telegraphed your attacks, I wouldn't have been able to dodge. Thrak processed her words. She was offering him tactical feedback, teaching him, after defeating him. Your fighting style, he said, I have never seen anything like it. It's designed for situations like this, when you're smaller and weaker than your opponent. Maria stretched her arms. Humans developed many martial arts over our history. Most of them were created by people who couldn't rely on superior strength. They had to be smarter, more efficient, better at using an enemy's power against them. You evolved to fight opponents larger than yourselves. We evolved to survive. Fighting was part of that. Not just fighting other species, fighting each other. She saw his expression change. Humans spent most of our history at war with ourselves. We developed combat into a science, strategy, tactics, weapons. We got very good at killing. Thrak understood something then. The human was not dangerous because of any single ability. She was dangerous because her species had refined violence into an art form over thousands of years. They had learned to overcome every disadvantage. They had developed techniques for defeating stronger opponents, faster opponents, more numerous opponents. And they had survived. I would learn from you, Thrak said, if you would teach. Maria looked surprised. I'm not a master, just a soldier. Among my people, a soldier who defeats a superior opponent is worth learning from. You defeated me, I would know how. Word spread quickly. The Krathic representative had challenged the human to single combat. The Krathic representative had lost. The human had offered to teach him. By the next day, 3 more candidates had approached Maria for training. A Sithara who wanted to learn human tactical thinking. A Mulvanni who wanted to understand human endurance techniques. A small mammalian species called the Virathi who had never qualified for warrior classification but hoped to improve their ranking. Maria taught them what she could. She explained the principles behind human combat. Economy of motion, using leverage instead of strength, reading body language, controlling the pace of engagement. Kethral observed these informal sessions. He noted that Maria never held back information. She taught willingly. She helped other species improve. This behavior did not match the Federation's understanding of warrior species. He pulled up historical records. Every warrior race in Federation history had guarded their combat techniques jealously. Secrets were power. Sharing them weakened your species' competitive advantage. Humans apparently did not think this way. He scheduled a private interview with Maria Chen. Why do you teach them? He asked. These species will compete against humanity for resources, for status, for contracts. Every technique you share makes them more dangerous to your own people. Maria considered the question. That's one way to look at it. Here's another way. Every species I help becomes more capable, more competent, better at defending themselves and others. If we ever have to work together against a common enemy, I want allies who can actually fight. You assume cooperation rather than competition. I assume both. Humans compete and cooperate. Sometimes with the same people. It depends on the situation. She leaned back in her chair. Let me ask you something. In 12,000 years of testing warrior species, how many of them have worked together effectively across species lines? Kethral accessed his records. Effective multi-species military cooperation is rare. Different biologies, different communication methods, different tactical doctrines. Mixed units typically perform at 70% efficiency compared to single-species formations. And you don't see that as a problem? It is the natural result of species differences. Maria shook her head slowly. It's the natural result of species not bothering to understand each other. The differences exist, but they can be overcome. Humans have proven that. We have hundreds of cultures on our homeworld. Different languages, different customs, different ways of fighting. We learn to work together anyway. Kethrall felt something shift in his understanding. You view other species as potential allies rather than rivals. I view everyone as a potential ally or a potential enemy. The choice depends on them as much as us. She met his gaze. Humans would prefer friends. We've learned that alliances make everyone stronger, but we're also prepared for the alternative. The final test came the next day. The Crucible Protocol concluded with an evaluation that the Federation kept secret. Candidates were placed in scenarios where they held complete power over helpless enemies. The test measured what species did when nothing restrained them. Most warrior races failed this test in predictable ways. Maria Chen found herself commanding a detention facility. Her prisoners were soldiers from an enemy force that had killed many of her simulated comrades. She had absolute authority. No oversight. No rules. The simulation watched to see what she would do. She established medical care for the wounded prisoners. She ensured adequate food and water for all of them. She separated the dangerous ones from those who had simply followed orders. She treated them with basic dignity. A simulated subordinate suggested rougher treatment, revenge for fallen friends. Maria relieved him of duty immediately. They're prisoners of war, she said. That means they have rights. Our rights. Not rights we give them because they deserve it. Rights we give them because of what we are. Kethrall watched the entire scenario. He had seen hundreds of species face this test. He had seen compassionate species become cruel when given power. He had seen disciplined species lose control when no one was watching. He had never seen a warrior species deliberately limit its own conduct. Why show mercy? He asked afterward. They killed your people. In the simulation, they killed your friends. And they're still people, Maria said. Enemies, yes, but people. Humans learned something important in our history. How you treat the helpless says more about you than how you treat equals. Cruelty to prisoners doesn't bring back the dead. It just makes you someone who tortures prisoners. Other warrior species do not share this philosophy. Other warrior species haven't had to rebuild after the wars we've fought. Her voice was quiet. We've done terrible things. Humans have committed atrocities that still haunt us, but we've also tried to learn from them. We created rules for war, conventions for treating prisoners, laws that limit what we can do even when we're winning. Not because we're weak, because we're strong enough to choose restraint. Kethrall understood then what made humans truly different. They had power and chose not to use it. They had the capacity for tremendous violence and deliberately limited themselves. They were dangerous not because they lacked morality, but because they possessed it despite every evolutionary pressure to abandon it. He completed his final report that night. The Federation was about to meet a species unlike any they had classified before. He hoped they were ready for what that would mean. The High Council chamber had not seen a full emergency session in 47 years. The last time, a previously unknown species had emerged from a dead zone of space with technology that threatened Federation stability. That crisis had taken 3 years to resolve. This crisis was a single human woman standing in the center of the chamber. The 12 founding species of the Galactic Federation occupied their traditional positions around the circular room. The Tholmians, ancient and patient, who had first proposed the Federation 12,000 years ago. The Vorthani, efficient administrators who kept the bureaucracy running. The Krathik, who provided military might. The Sithara, whose speed made them valuable scouts and messengers. 8 other species, each with their own role, their own classification, their own place in the system. And now there was humanity. Counselor Varath spoke first. His voice carried the weight of someone who had guided Federation policy for 6 centuries. Maria Chen, representative of Earth, you have completed the Crucible Protocol. Your results have been analyzed by our finest specialists. We have called you here to discuss classification. Maria stood at attention. Her posture was military perfect. Whatever nervousness she might have felt was invisible. I am ready to hear the Council's decision. There is no decision yet, Vareth said. There is debate. Your results do not fit our existing categories. This has never happened before. A Krethic counselor leaned forward. His armor gleamed under the chamber lights. Your physical metrics are insufficient for warrior classification. Strength in the lower third. Speed unremarkable. No natural weapons or armor. By our standards, your species should be classified as laborers. Maria said nothing. A Sithara counselor spoke next, her scales rippling with color. Yet your endurance exceeds any species we have measured. Your pain tolerance broke our testing equipment. Your psychological resilience allowed you to function under conditions that would destroy most warrior minds. These results suggest something beyond laborer capacity. And your strategic evaluation, a Mulvanni counselor added, demonstrated tactical creativity we have rarely seen. You maintained coherent command in a scenario designed to be unwinnable. You turned enemies into allies through pure manipulation. These are administrator-level skills. Varath raised a limb for silence. The problem is clear. You demonstrate qualities from multiple classifications, yet you fit completely into none of them. Our system does not have a category for what you represent. With respect, Maria said, perhaps the problem is the system rather than the species. The chamber went silent. Explain, Vareth said carefully. Maria stepped forward. Her movement was calm and deliberate. I've studied your classification system. Earth has been monitoring Federation communications for decades. We know how you evaluate species. We know what you measure, and we know what you don't. You admit to espionage? I admit to preparation. When a civilization of 12,000 years standing starts testing your people, you learn everything you can about the tests. Maria's voice carried no apology. Your crucible protocol measures specific traits: strength, speed, endurance, aggression, pain, tolerance, tactical thinking. You assign species to categories based on where they excel. This system has served the Federation effectively for millennia, a Vorthani counselor said. It has served the Federation's existing structure, Maria corrected. There's a difference. Your system rewards specialists. Species that excel in one area get placed in roles that use that specialization. Krathic become warriors because they're strong and aggressive. Sithara become scouts because they're fast. Mulvanni become heavy infantry because they can march forever. Everyone has a role. And this is wrong? It's incomplete. Maria turned slowly, addressing the entire council. Humans are not specialists. We're generalists. We're not the strongest, but we can build tools to multiply our strength. We're not the fastest, but we can create vehicles to outpace anything biological. We're not the most aggressive, but we can sustain strategic planning across generations. Our advantage isn't any single trait. It's adaptability. The Krathic counselor made a dismissive sound. Adaptability is not a warrior quality. Tell that to our history. Maria's voice hardened slightly. Humans have faced extinction multiple times. Ice ages that froze half our world. Volcanic events that blocked out the sun. Plagues that killed most of our population. We adapted and survived. We spread across every environment on our planet. We developed technology that let us exceed our biological limits. We evolved as persistence hunters who could chase prey for days. And then we evolved further to become whatever we needed to be. She paused. And we did this while fighting each other. We are aware of your species' internal conflicts, Vareth said. They are well documented. Then you know we've been developing warfare for thousands of years. Strategy, tactics, weapons. We got very good at killing. We created bombs that could destroy cities, weapons that could make planets uninhabitable. We stood at the edge of self-destruction multiple times. Maria's expression was calm, but her eyes were intense. And we're still here. We chose not to destroy ourselves. We developed rules for war, conventions for treating prisoners, laws that limited our own actions, even when we were winning. Not because we were weak, because we were strong enough to choose restraint. The chamber was completely silent. You measure species against fixed criteria, Maria continued. This rewards what species are, but you don't measure what species choose to be. You don't account for growth. for change, for the decision to limit your own power. She looked at each counselor in turn. Humans are dangerous not because of any single capability. We're dangerous because we can become whatever a situation requires. And we're trustworthy not because we lack the ability to harm. We're trustworthy because we have the ability and choose not to use it. Vareth was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. You suggest we cannot classify your species using existing categories. I'm suggesting you need a new approach entirely. The council debated for 6 hours. Maria Chen waited in an adjacent chamber while the founding species argued about humanity's fate. Some counselors wanted to reject her results entirely. Equipment malfunction, testing errors, anything to preserve the system that had worked for 12,000 years. Others recognized what they had seen, a species that didn't fit, a species that challenged their fundamental assumptions, a species that might require them to rethink everything. The Krathic counselor argued loudly for rejection. The human was weak by physical standards. Admitting otherwise would undermine Krathic dominance in the warrior classification. The Tholmians listened patiently. They had founded the Federation. They had seen species come and go. They remembered why the classification system existed in the first place. We built this system to organize, Varath said finally, to create order from the chaos of species competing for resources and status. The categories gave everyone a place, a role, a purpose. And it worked, another Tholmian added. For 12,000 years. Stability, peace, progress. But the system assumed something, Varath continued. It assumed species could be defined by what they were at the moment of testing. It assumed they would remain constant, that their strengths and weaknesses would stay fixed. He paused. The human demonstrates that assumption may be flawed. What do you propose? The Krathic counselor demanded. Varath was silent for a long moment. I propose we acknowledge our limitations. We cannot classify humanity using existing categories because humanity does not fit existing categories. We can either force them into a framework that doesn't suit them, or we can create something new. A new classification? A new approach. Varath looked around the chamber. We call the human back, we explain our situation honestly, and we ask her what humanity wants to become. Maria Chen returned to the council chamber. We have reached a decision, Varath announced. But first we have a question. Your species is new to faster-than-light travel, new to the larger galaxy, new to the Federation. What does humanity want from us? Maria considered the question carefully. We want what any species wants: safety, prosperity, a chance to grow and explore, room to develop our potential. And what are you willing to give in return? Cooperation, honesty, the benefits of our adaptability. She paused. And restraint. We have the capacity for tremendous violence. We would rather channel that capacity toward mutual defense than conflict. Many species have promised cooperation. Few have delivered. Then watch us. Let our actions prove our words. Maria's voice was steady. Humans don't expect trust. We expect to earn it. That's how we operate. We know we're new. We know our reputation is unestablished. Give us opportunities to demonstrate what we offer. Judge us by our results. Varath nodded slowly. The Council has decided that humanity cannot receive a standard classification. Your results exceed our categories in some areas and fall short in others. No existing designation fits. What does that mean for Earth? It means you will be designated as something new. Adaptive generalists. This category has no preset role or limitations. You will be allowed to find your own place in Federation society, to develop your own relationships, to prove yourselves through action rather than test scores. Maria absorbed this. That's more freedom than most species receive. It is, Varath acknowledged. Some counselors argued against it. They believe unconstrained humanity might become a threat. Others argued that constraining humanity might make you one. He leaned forward. We chose to give you the chance to show us who you will be. Do not make us regret it. We won't. The formal ceremony was brief. Documentation filed. Classifications recorded. Humanity officially entered the Galactic Federation as its first adaptive generalist species. Kethral met Maria Chen at the transport bay afterward. She was preparing to return to Earth with the Council's decision. In 400 evaluations, he said, I never questioned the system. You made me question everything. Maria smiled slightly. That wasn't my intention. Perhaps not, but it was the result. He watched her for a moment. I must ask, will humanity be a threat to the Federation? That depends entirely on how the Federation treats us. Maria's voice was honest. We're capable of tremendous cooperation. We're also capable of tremendous destruction. We prefer building to fighting. We prefer friends to enemies. But we won't accept being classified as inferior or expendable. Many species have made similar claims. Many species haven't survived what we've survived. Maria turned to face him fully. Humans endured ice ages, plagues, wars that nearly destroyed us. We're still here because we refused to give up. We adapted. We changed. We became whatever we needed to be. Her expression was serious. If the Federation treats us with respect, we'll be the best allies they've ever had. If they treat us with contempt, they'll discover why we're still here when so many other species aren't. Kethril nodded slowly. He understood now why humans had passed the final test. A species capable of limiting its own power was more trustworthy than one that simply lacked power. Humanity had demonstrated both capability and restraint, both strength and wisdom. I believe you will be valuable members of the Federation, he said. We intend to be. Maria extended her hand, human greeting gesture. Kethril had learned about it. He extended one of his limbs and grasped her hand briefly. Safe travels, he said. Thank you for everything. Maria released his hand. The tests were brutal, but fair. You measured what you knew how to measure. You acknowledged when your measurements fell short. That takes integrity. She walked toward her ship. Kethril watched her go. A single human, average by physical standards, unremarkable in most individual metrics. Yet somehow she had changed everything the Federation understood about classifying species. He returned to his office and began drafting new protocols. The Crucible Protocol had served the Federation for 12,000 years. It had measured strength, speed, endurance, aggression. Perhaps it was time to start measuring other things. Choice, restraint, adaptation, growth. The Federation had spent millennia measuring what species were. Kethril suspected the future would require them to measure what species chose to become. And humanity had just shown them that the choices mattered more than the measurements. Far away, Maria Chen's ship accelerated toward Earth. She opened a communication channel and transmitted her report. It was simple and direct. The Federation has systems. Humanity has potential. The two are about to meet. Prepare for interesting times. The transmission ended. Maria sat back in her chair and watched the stars stream past her viewport. Somewhere ahead, 20 billion humans waited to learn what the larger galaxy held for them. They were about to find out.